Hello, everyone, and welcome. We're live for another Masterclass session. Today, we're going to be showing power users how to create isometric dungeons. Pretty much what you can see on the screen right here. We're going to be trying to replicate this, not perfectly, but as close to it as we can, I suppose. If you do like this map, you can clone and edit it. I'll provide that link in the chat, so just clone and edit that for personal use. And also, we're not going to have enough time to probably create the entire dungeon today. So if this video becomes popular on YouTube, we'll probably turn this into a series in which you can kind of follow. And of course, I was kind of thinking we might include maybe like a little homework assignment. I don't want to say homework, but a little assignment to where whatever we don't complete today, I'll make the map clonable, and then you guys can finish the rest of the map. This would give you some nice isometric practice that you can kind of work with, and there'll already be some completed rooms, so you can kind of follow that process, look at one room, and then you'll be able to do the other rooms by kind of mimicking that same process that we did. So again, we're not going to be able to cover the whole one, but much of the process will get done. Whatever we don't get completed, I'll make this map clonable and you guys can complete it. So I'm kind of excited about all that. That should be fun. Now I'm not going to waste any more time. I'm just going to jump right into it. So we're going to go ahead and create a new map. It's going to be fantasy regional style. We're going to choose it. I'm going to go with Ultra 4K. If you don't have a very strong or powerful machine, use a lower editing resolution like 2 or 3K. I'm going to just do your standard landscape, your 40 by 30 tiles. Hey, welcome Desiree and Alice and Dragon. Glad that you are here. So first we're going to go ahead and prep the canvas. So that basically I'm going to prep the canvas on what we want to do. So first I'll turn on that grid. This grid is going to help me to use to set things up. So I'll make sure that grid is on, and I'm going to change it, the grid size as well. That's a little small. That would be a massive dungeon. So I'll switch it over to 20 tiles. And so now you kind of have these bigger tiles here. And then we're going to make the background black, because if it's a dungeon underneath the ground, then you're not going to see a lot of the stuff because it's underground. So we'll make that background black. I'll just fill. Now the whole background should be filled in. And then the next step is that I'm going to go over to the brush and I'm going to choose the foreground, choose texture, and then there should be these things called pavement. You just type in pave and you'll have these pavement 2 right here. And I'm just going to bring the scale up by going to the advanced settings. So bring the scale up a little bit and you can see the preview on the screen. And I'm probably going to bring the brightness down a little bit. There we go, because we are in a dungeon. And then I'm just going to make sure that the entire FG layer is filled. You won't be able to see it yet because I haven't added a mask yet. So I'll just go FG layer fill. Okay. Now that you've done all that stuff, now you can do the next step, which is creating the beginning room, the room that your players start in, and the ending room. So we'll go ahead and use the mask tool for this. We're going to use the grid brush. I'm going to bring it down to 1 so it only has 1 cell. And then for now, I'm just going to create that first room. And I'm just going to put it right here like that. And then we're going to change up some of the effects as well. I'm going to turn pretty much all of them off except for the inner shadow, because I'm going to use that inner shadow to create this ambient occlusion. So if I go into inner shadow and bring the blur, bring the intensity up, there you go. And you're going to see that right away that there is a little bit of a shadow right here, but let's make it black. There you go. And so there's a little bit of a ambient occlusion just to show that, hey, even though you can't see the wall, the shadow or the ambient occlusion from the wall is there. So now that you've created the first room, the room that you start in, then you can create the last room. And you can kind of put it wherever you want, but I generally try to put it further away from the start. So you can either put it in this corner over here, like this. And these are not the final shapes that I'm going to go with. It's just that I'm creating the first 2 rooms. The next step is to connect those 2 rooms, and you're going to create the main route, because with a dungeon, when you're playing like a tabletop, generally you don't want to have a lot of backtracking. That's great for like maybe a Metroidvania video game, but it's not necessarily great for tabletop. And so I'm going to create a main route in which the players are going to travel from one end to the other. And then along that route, we'll create several rooms. So what I'll do is I'll just create a route that kind of goes like this. kind of pushes through and then leads to the back here. Okay, so now that we have that put together, now we can create each individual room that's going to take place on the path. So I'll make a couple rooms. Let's create this room here. Oopsie, I've noticed that that kind of connects with this, so we'll kind of move that over. We'll go over to subtract and minus this. There we go. And put this down to 1. There we go. And let's go ahead and create another room. I think that looks good. Oh, let's remove this one. Now, I'm sure some of you are wondering, well, wait a minute, where is the more natural looking rooms, right? Well, we're going to start with the tile or the grid brush first, and then we'll add in the more natural elements to it later. So let's just kind of create another room right here. I think this should look good. And then we'll create another room right here. I think that should look good. Put a room here. And then there's enough room for a bigger room kind of right here. So let's go ahead and put that one in. I'm making this a bit of a smaller dungeon so that there's enough time to maybe get a lot of it done. Again, whatever doesn't get done, maybe you guys can go ahead and finish the rest of it, which I think would be kind of cool. So let's go ahead and just add in the rest of the stuff here, making sure that I got these rooms put together. There's a little bit of space right there. Let's see here. There's a little bit more space right here too. There we go. So there should be enough room now for all of this stuff. So that looks good. The next step is to give it the more natural look. It's underground, right? It's cavernous, right? So we're going to use the edgy brush, and we're going to turn off the smooth because we want it to look like it's kind of in ruin and stuff. And then what you'll do is you'll kind of zoom in, and then you want to create the more cavern-like elements. Let's go ahead and go up to 8, actually. I'll go right here like this. And you'll notice that I'm starting to kind of create the more cavern part of it. And the trick is contrast, right? You have a lot of straight lines, and then you have a lot of broken up lines. And what that does is it creates a contrast, right? A more edgy looking room or more natural looking room is going to contrast against the straighter lines of a room that looks more like there's 90-degree angles. And by mixing in those two elements, you create contrast, and it makes it more interesting. So I'm going to go from room to room, just kind of adding in where I want the more natural parts to kind of be. And I can kind of go in and kind of fill in, even create like a circular part, a little half circle right here for this part, maybe even a little part here. And then maybe right here, I can create another room that's kind of just circular like this. There we go. So you start with the straight lines first, and then you move to the edgy brush, and that way it doesn't all look the same. So it's a nice little kind of trick to give it a little bit more interesting. Remember that trick. Contrast is how you make things pop out. So always try to remember that trick. Very helpful. Okay, let's go ahead and add in some more stuff here. I think that looks good. There's a lot of room right here, so let's go ahead and add in another kind of half circle element right here. That looks good. And then what we can do is we can even connect maybe these two, but what we'll do is we'll put some rubble here. And that way it'll look like that area has been blocked off. Because I try not to have too many, like players do like options, but too many kind of leads into backtracking. So try not to have too many routes that branch off from the main route unless it's just a few feet into like a small storeroom or something. It's just because backtracking is not a whole lot of fun. Again, it works great in maybe like a Metroid video game, but when you're playing tabletop, it's not always the most fun. And it really just depends on your players too, right? Some players don't mind backtracking, others will not stand it. So you just got to know your players and figure out what they like and don't like. Okay, let's just keep adding some more half circles here. And I think I'll create like a little circular corner here that should kind of break up that edge there. And let's have a little bit this way, like this. That looks kind of good. There we go. And I think I'm going to break up some of this too. There we go. Let's do this at corner right here. There you go. So it's kind of coming together. You're kind of getting the general idea, the basics. You start from the beginning room, and then you kind of create the last room, and then you connect the main route. And that way it's easy, right? There's a continuity here. So when I go to walk around here, there's a very clear path on how to get to where I want to go, right? It leads, oopsie, don't really want to use that stroke. I kind of want to use a different one. Let's use this one so people can kind of see it better. There you go. There's a very clear route that kind of leads to the ending, right? There might be one little route here that's maybe blocked off or something, just to kind of break up the windy, the meanderingness of the main route. So it's okay to put in those little tiny rooms and stuff. I don't think that really hurts. Just remember not to backtrack too much. Now, more changes might happen to it, but I think we're good where we are. So I'll quickly save it, and we'll just call it ISO Dungeon. And then we're going to start with the first room. And what's really important is starting with the first room is because the first room is going to set the tone for the rest of the dungeon, right? So a lot of the similar stamps you're going to be using are going to be from the first room. Some of the layout, some of the texturing. And so it's always good to, what I generally do is I'll make the first room, and then I won't stop making the first room until it's completely finished. Details, lighting, shadows, and everything. And then that way I set a standard for the rest of the rooms to kind of follow. Instead of adding a little bit here and there to each room, I mean, I know that maybe that works better for your process, but for me, I'm kind of noticing that by mastering or getting down the first room, you've set the standard for the rest, and then you can kind of follow that pattern and that process that you've done. So it's kind of helpful to do that. So let's start with the first room. And when it comes to the first room, I generally try to have some way in which the players enter the dungeon, whether it's some kind of lift, a staircase, or whatever it might be. Maybe there's a rope coming down from the ceiling and it comes from like a well that they went down to. Whatever it might be, you can kind of decide. The easiest thing to do is just to add a staircase. So there are these stairs right here from the Babylonian pack. These work just fine. I feel these work great. You can just put a stair like right here and see how it kind of blends off of the screen and a little bit like that. I think that actually looks kind of nice. And then I'll just desaturate it. And I'm going to take the grid, I'm going to put it at the lowest layer so that all the stamps are below it. So there's that first step. And what we'll do is we'll kind of create some decorations to kind of add to it to make it more interesting. So I'll go in and add a couple more things. Like I could take one of these right here, kind of finish off the wall here a bit. Let's go with desaturate, bring the brightness down. I want to match everything. Let's put it right up against here like this. I think that looks good there. And then we'll add a statue. I think a statue might look good. Let's see here, about that size. Looks good. This will kind of give us a kind of something to kind of work with. So we have a statue right there. There's a staircase. And then why don't we, let's talk about like where to place walls. This is kind of important, so kind of remember this, but there's a place where you don't want to put solid walls, and that's going to be on the bottom left and right faces. And the reason why is because if I was to place a wall here, guess what? You wouldn't be able to see what's going on, right? So where you put the walls is on the back side of your dungeon, because if you don't, again, you're going to block. So it's always okay to put things on the back or the top left and right sides. This way you won't block visibility when your players are moving around on the battle map. So I can go in now and I can place like maybe more of these. I can continue placing a wall here until it looks good like that. Or I can add in a little bit of wall and ruin stuff as well. So I can go in here. Let's go type in stal. And there should be some stalagmites here. These work great in like a cavernous setting. So I'll just desaturate these and kind of place a couple of these. And remember that rule, you place them up against the wall, and it's okay to break this rule as long as it's just like maybe one little thing, like one little piece right there is okay. You notice how it just blocks a little bit? So it's okay to break that rule, okay? Just remember not to create a full-fledged wall of stalagmites or stalactites along here because it will block the visibility. So I'll place maybe one more right here just so that kind of fits in the continuity of it. And then I kind of have this nice starting room with the stairs that go down and then go into the main part. So I've kind of set that up. And we can also add in a couple more things like make the ground more interesting. You can use summoning circles from the fantasy battle map style, and I'll show you how to transform them to where they fit in an isometric way. So I'll go ahead and use maybe one of these summoning circles right here. I'm going to make sure to put it down beneath everything. And then I'm going to choose the luminosity blend mode and maybe bring the contrast down, bring the brightness up a little bit, and then use this hot transform bar right here, and then just kind of place it right here. And I might even bring the opacity down a little bit. And then you have a little bit of a more of an interesting floor kind of going into it. And if you don't like that summoning circle, there's also more broken ones as well. So we could use this broken one instead if you wanted to. I just go to normal, go to the blend mode, go to luminosity. Oopsie, don't want to select that. Change it up. There we go. Place it here. And then I'll bring the opacity back up, bring the brightness up, contrast. There we go. Just want to make sure that it kind of matches onto the floor. And then you kind of have this nice summoning circle-like element that's kind of on there as well. Right, so that's like the first room. Now, some other things that we might want to add in here is maybe some pillars in the corner to kind of create more, because what I have is kind of a mix between natural and unnatural features, like the stalactites there, and I have a wall piece. So maybe we can take a pillar from the fantasy regional style. Oopsie, let me go ahead and make sure I switch over to it, fantasy regional. And there should be these pillars right here. And one of the reasons why I like these pillars so much is because they don't have a shadow, which is super nice and helpful. So I'll go ahead and take this piece, desaturate it, bring the brightness down, put it in that corner, copy and paste another one in this corner. And I won't put one in this corner right here, but I could place them up on top right here like this, just to give it that extra bit of detail, just like that. And what's kind of cool is you can also take one pillar and then make it look like it fell down. Oopsie, my mistake. Select it, rotate it, and then it looked like it crashed and fell down. And it kind of creates a little frame on that part. So you don't have to put anything there except for that pillar. Make it look like it fell down. That's a nice little trick that you can do there. And then we might want to add in a light source that kind of represents that that takes you up to the surface, right? How is it that I know that that would take me to the surface? By adding in a light source at the top of the stair to show that there is some kind of light source leading to the outside. So I'll put this up a layer, and then I have a light right there, and that kind of leads down to it. And just for fun, we'll even put some lights in the statue's eyes as well. That will give it kind of a more interesting look to it. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and turn the blend mode to normal, and then put the light source right on top of the eyelids on the statue. Let's push it up maybe to 5. Copy, paste. There we go. And then we'll add a light source again back to overlay blend mode, and then a little bit bigger, and then place it right in the front. And that way you have that extra glow. Okay. And so now you have that first kind of room. The other things that you can add is some rubble from the fantasy battle map style. So we've got some rubble right here. I'll bring the saturation down, and then I'll place these, turn the shadow off, and put them right beneath like this. And then I'll turn the shadow off, and then you can place them right there at the base of these, and it will kind of look like there's some rubble that has fallen down. Hey, first time chatter, Vint. Glad that you are here, by the way. Awesome. So glad you're enjoying the tool. So let's go ahead and place these like right here. So I kind of have some rubble on the side here. And let's add another one just right there. There we go. And so now you have this nice kind of rubble going on right here. And that first room is kind of set up and ready to go. And you can kind of move on to that next room. So we'll go ahead and save it. And then we'll kind of move on to the next room. So you're kind of getting the general idea. When you've got all the rooms shapes done, then you start to populate it. And what I generally do is I start with a centerpiece or a headpiece, the main piece that's inside of that room. And because the first room is the entrance, it's the staircase and the light source that I want to accentuate as the centerpiece, because that's the room's centerpiece should focus on its function, right? The function of the first room is the room that you enter in. So I'm putting focus on the entrance with the light going up to the surface. You're going to follow that same logic with every room, right? You're going to find a centerpiece that's going to act as the focal point, and the function of that room. So if I move to the next room over here, then I can try to set some logic about this room. So this next room is maybe like a puzzle room, right? And so maybe I want to create a puzzle. Instead of the first one doing some kind of combat, the first thing we can get your player's intellect kind of going. So you should always kind of pick a theme for each room before you start working on it. That first room is going to be a puzzle. Hey, first time chatter, glad that you are here. Kaizi Dane, awesome. So let's go ahead and use some of the similar elements that we used in the first room, like maybe these pieces right here can kind of act as walls. And if you don't like that, then you can use something else as well. That pack is quite useful in Fantasy Regional because there is also these, let's see here, there's some arches here that you can use as well. And these work great too. Let's try using one of these. So I'll desaturate, bring the brightness down a little bit. And now there are shadows on these, so just kind of remember that, if that doesn't really bother you. And so you have these two kind of things right here. And then what we can do is put statues inside of them. Remember the continuity with the first room? We can put some two statues in there. And then maybe there's a some kind of puzzle that involves like putting a certain item in one of the statue's hands that kind of activates maybe the room is locked. And to go to that next room, you have to kind of solve this puzzle. So it's not a bad idea. So we can go in and grab another statue. It doesn't really matter which one you use. It's up to you. Here's some of the new art that's coming up. I don't want to share too much of it, but just some new art that's coming out. Fun stuff. I'll go ahead and desaturate this and kind of place that statue right there. I'll bring the brightness down just a hair. One statue there, and then we'll put another one right here. And you have to make it small enough because you can't make it look like it's in front of this, but it's behind this arch. So you have to place it in the center in a way to where it looks like it's not going to interact with the arch. So it's kind of helpful, right? Because you can't put it in the front, you can't put it in the back. That's not the way the stamps work. It's either going to be in front of the whole stamp or behind the entire stamp. So you'll have to place those there. And now you have those two kind of statues right there that your players maybe want to interact with. And we can go to Fantasy Battle Maps again, and I do believe there's some more circle stuff that you can use, like right here. You can use this tile-like circle that's in the Eastern pack. And remember, you just transform it. Just remember, the only way to transform a stamp is if it's at the 0 rotation or angle, right? So if I go 1 angle, you notice that those hot bars for transformation go away. So you have to be at 0 degrees for that to work. So we'll go to luminosity, bring that brightness down. And now we have like this nice circle here, and it kind of fits in right there, and that looks okay. And then we can add in some more wall stuff. We'll just place these in the back just to kind of fill out the wall. There's nothing behind it, so we can just add in these elements right here. Put them in the back. And then we can even add some right here, one right here, and then one right there, I think should be okay, but let's push it to the front. Yes, isometric battle maps are difficult to put together, so you have to do a lot of practice to kind of get together. Okay, so we kind of have some wall there, and then again, right, we can maybe use some of that same elements we used before. Let's add some ruin stuff. Again, they work great at the base of that stalagmite. So you can put one there, and then maybe we can put another one like right here, kind of bleeding off over to here, kind of coming out of that wall there. And we'll bring the brightness down a little bit to kind of match it in. There you go. Let's take a step back and just kind of look at it so you can kind of see what we're working with. Okay. And what I generally do when I'm putting together a isometric battle map, and I'm sure some of you do this as well, it really doesn't matter what kind of battle map you'll do, is I'll actually pretend that I'm a player and I'm walking around through the dungeon and seeing, okay, is this thing in the way? Is this stalagmite too much in the way for player visibility? And then I'll look around at things, explore, look at locations, and then I'll kind of walk down the path and then walk into the next one. And this is a way of kind of making sure that you kind of comes together, because sometimes when you're working on a map at such a great distance like this, you don't really get to zoom in and look at maybe mistakes that you've made, some possibilities for more details to add in. It's always kind of a trick to kind of put together everything. So, and of course, if you have any questions about putting this stuff together, you can always reach out to me on Discord or anyone else who makes these isometric dungeons. I'm the only one that I know of. I'm sure there are some others out there, but not very many. Okay, so we've kind of put that room together. What happens if we want to show that maybe there's a light source kind of coming from the ground up above going down? Then you can just put a light source wherever you want, and that will kind of represent a light source coming down. And I'll just put it right there for right now. That way you have a little bit of light right here to see what you're doing, and we'll add in a bunch of filters and stuff later. In fact, we can add one right now just to kind of get a feel for it. We're going to go to color filters, and we're probably going to use a purple, a cold and warm filter. I'm not going to have it so high up. So this will kind of give it a little bit more purplish tint to it. And the other thing that you should probably use is a texture filter called Old Paper. You'll find that in the Parchment World style. Right here, Old Paper. Because we're not in that style, you'll have to change the blend mode. Just change it to Overlay. And if I turn it off, you'll see that it adds some grime and dirt to it, which looks good, right? That adds a little bit more kind of what you would expect from a dungeon. So now that we've added those filters, we can kind of start working on the other stuff there. So there's a lot of room here still. I'm seeing a lot of things that we could do. We could add in books, we can add pages, we can add notes from maybe some original adventurers who died coming down here, trying to get to it. To show that there's like a level of danger, what we could do is throw in some skulls. So we can go into textures. We'll go into fantasy battle maps and just type in skull. And there's these nice skulls right here. And I'll just go ahead and bring the saturation down. I'm going to have to change the scale. It's got to be fairly small. And then I'll go ahead and bring the opacity down just a little bit. And then we'll put a series of skulls in this corner right here, just to kind of give it that sense of, oh, whoa, what did we walk into? There we go, and that gives it a little bit more kind of a creepy feel to it, which is what I was aiming for. And then I might want to add in a couple things in these corners, like adding in a pillar right here is not a bad idea, and adding another one right here. And it's not blocking too much of the player's visibility when they're walking around, just a little bit here, not too bad. You can also just bring the opacity down, like this if you want to have it there, and you can still, it's not too far out of the way. It's another trick that you can do. It's really up to you. But remember, the general rule is just not to have a full-fleshed wall kind of blocking the visibility. That's why it's important to maybe just pillars, here a pillar here or there is okay, okay? All right, let's go ahead and remove this light source, and what I'll do instead is put a little campfire right where the bones are. If you don't know anything about the history of a bonfire, it was originally called a bone fire, so because they would burn the bones. And so what might be interesting is to put a campfire there from Fantasy Regional. And we'll just kind of put it right on top of here. And you know what I can do is I can also desaturate it a little bit, because I'll use a light source to do the coloring for me. So I'll kind of place it like right here. And then I'll take an orange light source. We'll go to light. Oopsie. Let's go with light. It should be in Fantasy Battle Maps. I've said this in multiple streams before, but really cool trick is to use layering light sources. So if you use an orange light source to color the flame, then you can use another light source on top of that, this bigger, yellower one. Yes, you can do your Estus flask. I love it. Okay, and then I kind of put it down right here like this. There we go. Yeah, I see some people asking questions about the grid. You just change the grid afterwards. So we would go back to the original piece right here, the 40 by here, and you'll see that the grid is actually closer to the right size. I only had it bigger because there's a problem. When the scale of the grid is too small, notice that the inner shadows right here, those inner shadows become so, they get too close to each other, and it makes the entire passage like this dark black color, and it doesn't really work well. And so you need to create a little bit of distance between your shafts a little bit. so that way those passages aren't just completely black from that inner shadow, but we all will paint some shadows in there as well. But it's just to kind of give you a general idea. But I generally just double it when I go to add the FG layer, and then I'll bring it back to its original size. So you can see here it's its original size. And I'll show you a cool trick too. You can see the grid in the black, but what happens if you want to see the grid not on the black and only on the dungeon itself? Right now, the object, there's shadows on. If I turn the shadow off, you'll notice that because the background is black and the ground of the dungeon is not, you can see the grid only on the dungeon part and on the part that you can't see because it's the same color as the grid. So a nice little trick to only make sure that the grid shows up in the dungeon part. That's it. So a cool little trick that you can kind of use there. And I do want the dungeon to kind of show up. I want to show the grid to show up on top of this as well. So what I can do is just go to flatten and flatten this to the FG layer. And now I have that there and I can still see the grid. Now the grid is a little too strong. So I'll bring the opacity of it down so that I can see the hint of the grid, but not too much of it, right? And now you can see a nice grid, nice and easy to work with. And there's lots of room. Okay, and I'm also going to take this and kind of place this to where it's kind of centered on one of the cells or the grid itself. There we go. So 104 changes, we'll save it. Where are we at for time? Oh, we got 30 minutes. We did okay. We got a little bit of stuff done. That's kind of helpful. All right, we'll let this save and we'll kind of finish up this room and then we'll kind of go to the next one. Yeah, flattening can be scary. If you don't like that flattening option, what you can do instead is just bring the grid up to layer -4 instead of -5, and that way it will still be above the thing. But I'm not going to add any more textures in here, so it's okay if you flatten. It's just up to you. Good. Hey, first time chatter. Glad that you are here, by the way. Love it. Okay. So now that we have that grid there, let's go ahead and add in some pieces. One thing that might be nice is to have a pillar look like it kind of fell over. Well, actually, no, we'll keep it this time. We'll leave it there. That's fine. Oh, let's do with maybe this one fell over. Nah, we'll leave it up. Being indecisive there, right? Kind of fun. I think this room overall looks good. Let's add in some details. You know what might be cool is maybe adding some notes from the adventurer's journal that kind of explains maybe some of how the puzzle operates. So if you type in paper in Fantasy Battle Maps, we'll go to expand all assets, and there should be some paper in here. Perfect. We'll add this paper in here. Probably going to have to bring the brightness down a little bit. And I'll go ahead and place these like this. And so these will be the notes from the journal. And I'm going to go ahead and just place them by maybe one of the statues here. There we go. So you have these notes right here that are going to kind of tell us a little bit about how to solve that puzzle. And then other things that we can do is, because we have all these skulls, what we don't have is some bones. So we can type in skell or skeleton, and then we can kind of put in some of these skeleton pieces in here, and then we can kind of use the skulls to help reference scale. And so I'll go ahead and put maybe one leaning up against the pillar right here. I can desaturate it, bring the brightness down a little bit. There we go. And then we can add another one, maybe make a ring of dead corpses that kind of go around it. And then maybe we'll add another one right here, but I want to make sure that it's behind the pillar. Big trick on making things look good is overlap, right? To show that the pillar is in front or behind something, I can put that skeleton right behind it, and that will give it that sense of depth. So overlap is super important for that kind of stuff. Let's bring the brightness up on this to make sure that they kind of show up more. There we go. So I can kind of see them. So you have some nice bones there. I think that looks good. Let's go ahead and add the last bit of details in here. We'll go ahead and throw in a stalactite just right here, kind of connect it to this. Or we can move it over to here like this. I think that might look okay. And then we'll take that rubble and then kind of put it underneath right here. So we have a little bit of rubble underneath that one. Or you can put it on top. Doesn't really matter. I think that looks okay. We'll do a straight line there. Let's bring it down. There we go. Okay. So I think that room looks pretty good. I get the general idea. There's a puzzle going on here. We could do maybe some continuity by adding maybe some lights to one of the statue, but not the other one, to indicate that something isn't right. Like one of the, it's to indicate that there's like a puzzle there. One of the statues has lights on it and the other one doesn't. I think that's kind of an indicator that there's some interaction that needs to be done with it. So let's go ahead and bring these light sources down, and then we'll go back over here and I'll put it just right on top like that. Bring the opacity down. There we go. Okay. And this should indicate to your players that, hey, one of the statues is lit up while the other one isn't, and it should indicate that there's some kind of puzzle or a quest or something like that going on. That should be helpful to kind of indicate that. So now we can kind of move on to that next room, and then we can kind of decide on what we want to put in there. What I might do is kind of add a little bit more room here by kind of filling it out right here. That's true. But you know what? What I always do is I try to make it like crystal clear. Like those notes right there, your players will probably look at those pieces of paper and want to go to them. And you can always like change things up. When players kind of don't go the route that you expect them to, that's okay. Whatever it is that was that you were going to get from that puzzle, they were going to get from that puzzle, you can put it somewhere else in the dungeon, right? So it's about being fluid, about letting your players kind of dictate what happens, and then you just have like cards that you have, and then you can play the card that you want on the specific room, instead of having like, ooh, a set linear path of everything that's supposed to happen within each room. Instead, think of it as like a roguelike game where you have like a hand, and then each hand is going to have what the player has to solve or defeat a monster to get what they need to get to the next room. You can always scatter those throughout each room. So it's always a better method instead of trying to force them into a linear thing. I don't like to dictate where my players go and what they do. I prefer to give them that autonomy and freedom. And then that way, with that fishbowl method, as that first time chatter there, or that, as Zambuni said, that method kind of works. Classical Empire pack release. I can't give you an exact date, but it's very soon, and I mean very soon. Very, very soon. Like probably within the next couple of weeks or so. But I don't want to, I can't give you an exact date because we just don't do that. It's always best to not give deadlines, and so that way we're not, you know, kind of skimping on quality. So it's kind of one of the reasons why we don't do deadlines. It's a good way to make sure that the quality stays the same. And deadlines have a tendency to kind of give people stressed out, and it gives them pressure, and it doesn't really, the quality might not come out as well because of that. So it's always best to kind of just take our time and kind of make sure that everything is right and doing well. Hey, another first time chatter. Welcome. Glad that you're here. So let's go ahead and go on to this next room. I'm going to go ahead and take a step back. Let's see here. Let's have some combat going on right now. What we did a puzzle, and you know, I don't like to have multiple puzzles in a row with each room. And so what I'll end up doing is, since the last room was a puzzle, I'll do combat. And so what I'll do is, let's maybe use a crater from Fantasy Regional, and maybe I want to have like a spider's den or something like that. And so the way to kind of go about doing that is to kind of maybe like put a crater in the room like this. We'll use the luminosity blend mode right here. And then let's maybe take a cave, and where the spiders kind of come out of. So I can kind of create like this creepy kind of cave piece that's going to be inside of the crater like this. We'll go ahead with the normal luminosity blend mode again. I'm just going to place it right here. And then what it is spiders will come out of this hole, out of this pit, and then you'll have to kind of fight them as they kind of come out. And so that's going to be some nice combat there. All right. Let's go ahead and add in those stalactites to create the wall. So what I'm going to do is, I'm not going to have natural wall, or not going to have human-made or whatever made walls. I'm going to go with all natural walls here to Spider's Den. And to kind of show that, I will do this method of just kind of creating natural walls. I'll kind of place here. Don't forget, it's okay to place a couple in the front, just not too many. Like right here is a good one. Right there, I think, should look good. Right there. It doesn't block too much of the visibility. So we take a step back and look at it. And so that kind of cavern looks good. And then we'll go ahead and throw in the rubble part at the base. So I'll throw in some rubble here. Oh, let's push it down a layer. There we go. Oh, let's push this down another layer as well. There we go. I want the rubble to be on top of the crater. So I'll go ahead and put more rubble, maybe some rubble even going into the crater like that. That might look good. And then let's add, let's flip this, throw this in here, push it down a layer. There we go. Right there looks good. There we go. So we got some good rubble kind of coming in here. That's nice. Let's put some more over here. There we go. Some nice rubble. And then we'll add in some here as well. I think this should properly frame everything, I hope. There we go. Yeah, that looks good. There we go. Okay. Yeah, I'd say overall that looks pretty good. Let's maybe bring the brightness down a little bit on this one, and maybe bring the brightness down on this one a little bit as well. There we go, to kind of match it in. And we could have like an eerie light coming out of it so that way it's clear that there's like something eerie coming out. So let's add maybe like a purplish glow like that. And then we can also throw in some skulls or bones to kind of represent like, hey, this is a danger area, right? So we'll throw in some bones, some skeletons, and then maybe use some of that bone texture that we had, or the skull texture. Just kind of lightly place it in here. There we go. Put in some skulls here. There we go. So you guys are getting a general idea. Okay. Let's take a step back and look at it. Let's go ahead and take that light source, and we'll make it nice and big. We'll put it in the entire thing in here, and then I'll bring the opacity down so it's not too overwhelming. And you have this nice eerie kind of purple glow. The one thing we don't have is some spider webs. Like, how do we know that it's a spider's den without having some kind of webbing? So in fantasy battle mats, there should be web. You could use these. And what we'll do is we'll put these in between the stalactites. So if I go ahead and just kind of select them and put a couple kind of going in like this, let's flip it a little bit. And what I want to do is kind of have the web pointing inward towards the crater. So I'll place another one right here. Let's place a couple right here. And then let's place another one right here. Let's see here. Oh, there we go. Another one right there should look good. There we go. And the spider web's kind of slowly kind of coming together. There we go. Let's see here. What else can we add in here? I think overall that looks good. Let's go ahead and throw in this kind of bigger one, like right up top, like right here, like that. There we go. Okay, so you do have the spider webs there. Let's go ahead and save it with so many changes. I might do some last little details, like maybe throwing on some of the smaller, maybe just throwing some smaller pieces like this, just to kind of give it a little bit more depth to it. I think that looks good. I don't want it to be perfectly separated from each other, for perfect equidistant to each other. I want to have some clustered together and some not. So I'll copy and paste, put another one right here, and maybe another one right there. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and save it. Where are we at for time here? 43. Yep, there's no way we were going to finish the whole dungeon, but you guys are getting kind of the process on how it works and kind of putting them together. It's not complex. It's just that you kind of have to focus on that first room, and then once you've kind of set that theme, then it's easy to kind of put the rest of the rooms together. Let's go ahead and take a step back and kind of look at it and see what it looks like so far. I'm kind of enjoying the way that it's going. Some things that might be interesting to add into it. Let's maybe throw in some textures to kind of make it look like there's some cracked ground going on. So if I go into Fantasy Battle Maps, textures, if I type in cracked, there's this nice cracked ground texture. I'm going to bring the size down. And what's very helpful, hey, first-time player adventurers, hey, I'm glad you find this helpful. The cracked ground is going to be wherever you use the edgy brush, right? Because it's got this natural feel to it. So if I go in with this texture right here, let me bring it all the way up to 100%. And then you get this nice cracked ground, and you can put it wherever, like I said, wherever you used the edgy brush. So I can put it right here in the edgy brush, right here, all on the edgy brush. And that's going to give it some more, because what happens to a wall is it erodes over time, right? From earthquakes, from erosion, all of that stuff. And to show that erosion, you can add in the cracked ground in these areas. So this really kind of helps it out. There we go. And I'm just going to do that to every single section, just to add a little bit of extra. Something that I like to do in there. Just gives it a more realistic feel to it. Just adding in these nice cracked ground textures. Let's see here. Here looks good, and maybe in some in here as well. There we go. And so you have that nice cracked ground texture in there. All right, so now we've got that cracked ground. Let's go ahead and make one more room. We got 15 more minutes, so let's go ahead and create one more room. I think what would be good here is to maybe create like a circle of pillars and then like maybe a well. So I'll create a circle of pillars that kind of go around like this. And then what I'll do is I'll have some of them fallen over. Like this one right here has like collapsed and kind of fallen over. So I'll bring it down a layer. And then I'll have this one maybe kind of having some of them leaning a little bit in different directions to kind of look like maybe there's been some activity. So I'll just kind of rotate them. Let's put this one down on the ground as well because it kind of blocks it. So I'll put it right there. Now it won't get in the way. And then we can put a well. And I think we should go to Fantasy Regional. We'll kind of use this well right here, and I'll put it right there in the center. I'm going to go ahead and look at the skulls here and just make sure that I get my scale right. Make sure it's not too massive. I think that's about the right size. That works fine. Let's go ahead and put a well right there. That looks good. There we go. And one thing, I'm going to put it maybe like right here, a little more central to it. There we go. Yeah, the cracked ground texture is one of the best textures out there, if you ask me. So let's go ahead and right now we've got a lot of gray and we don't have a lot of warmer colors. We kind of have a lot of cooler colors right now outside of the light sources. So really cool trick. You can use rubble from Fantasy Battle Maps. And there's this nice ruined rubble right here. It should be this wooden stuff right here. And this has got this brown, warmer color, and I really, really like that. And I think that would look good here. And what it looks like is maybe a room has collapsed, right? And so to show that, I can like add a bunch of wood right here like this, and then I can bring the brightness down. And I can create this kind of pile of wood that kind of looks like a shaft collapsed or a part of a chamber collapsed, because all of that wood is going to be basically the wooden frame that's going to be holding up the ceiling. And so when you have a giant pile of wood like this, what it might implicate to the player is that this part has collapsed. And so it's kind of nice to put that in there. And you can also add it in other parts too. Like maybe I wanted to have like maybe some of that would be over here somewhere or right here. You can always kind of add in where you want to do it. If you don't like it there, you can put it somewhere else. Like maybe I want to put it like right here. So there's a lot of cool things that you can kind of do. I'm going to quickly try to mention a lot of the cool things we can do before we leave. The other thing I want to mention that you can do that looks really good is that you can kind of line some of your walls with these pieces right here. And I only use them where there's a straight line. So for instance, these would look good like right here, like this. And I can kind of place them and use them as a way to kind of line my walls. Now, when you get to a part of a natural wall, what's cool is that you can go ahead and just rotate it a little bit to make it look like it's a part of the ruin, of the collapse, right? By just kind of rotating them a little bit and having them do that. So it's a nice little kind of trick that you can do to make it look more interesting. So I'll go ahead and place another one right here so you have some there. They are a little bright, so we could bring the brightness down on them a little bit. Okay, just like that. There we go. Looks a little better. It's a nice way of kind of framing something in a little bit. And it's always nice to frame in. And what's nice too is they're not too long. So I can place, they're not too tall. So I can place them in the walls that are facing in front because they're not too tall to kind of block the player's visibility. Another really great reason to use them is because of that too. So kind of helpful to do that. Okay. Let's go ahead and place a couple more right here like this. There we go. And I'll go ahead and place a couple more too, right here and here. I just want to get in a bit of it just to kind of add it in. It's always a nice little element that you can kind of add in there. Oh, let's bring it down a layer. My bad. There we go. Same thing with this one. I'll have to go down a layer. There we go. Okay. I see there's a lot of straight lines right here, so we can kind of place a bunch like right here. And I'm placing them kind of outside of the dungeon area, as you can see, into the kind of where the black area is. And then let's go ahead and rotate these a little bit just to kind of give it that broken kind of feel to it. It's those little tiny details that can mean a lot. It's always nice to kind of add in some of those elements. Let's go ahead and put some in here. I like to put them in corners, even if the corners aren't completed. Like just putting them in a corner like this just to highlight a corner. That can look very interesting. There you go. So not complex, pretty easy stuff to kind of put together. Let's go ahead and put another one right here like this. There we go. So I think overall that looks good, but you get the idea. It's just mostly on the straight parts. Again, if you get to like a more broken part of the wall that's more natural, just start having them rotate a little bit. So it looks like they're kind of broken and been moved out of place and stuff like that. Nice little thing to add. Where are we at for time? 9 more minutes. Let's go ahead and touch up this last room right here. What I'll do is I'll take rubble and make it look like this whole room, this whole wall right here has some rubble on it. So I'll go ahead and place it here, put another one here and here, kind of like that. And then we'll put some right here, here. Let's not do that one. Right here looks good like that. And then let's see here, we can put one more right here like that. I think that should look good. Just have the straight lines just go right to where the wall is, just like that. And that will kind of frame that section. If you want, you can even add more kind of going up like this if you want. That way it doesn't look all kind of the same, so you can do that. That's up to you. There we go. So now we have that nice section there. And if you want, you can throw a light source in there like that, just to throw it in there. And where you can throw in a torch. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll have like a lit torch from Fantasy Battle Maps. I'll put that torch down. I'll put it somewhere so I can put the torch like right here, like that. It's just lying there, and then I'll put that little orange light and put it right where the torch is, the flame is, and then you have a nice little torch. So you can see there's a lot of things that you can kind of do. It's pretty cool when you kind of put things together. It's just you have to be creative, and you should always have a theme for each room. Like with the, after defeating, you start in the main room, and then when you go from the main room, you go into the starting room, you go into the puzzle room. You'll solve puzzles. Maybe you'll rest by the campfire, eat some food, regenerate your health, prepare yourself for the combat that takes place in the next dungeon, the next room, and then you'll move in through here. You can put in a series of traps in here if you want to, something that your players can kind of avoid as they go through. And then when they get to this well area, maybe they have to, maybe there's like a rope that leads down into the well, and maybe there's something inside the bucket with the rope that your players have to find that leads the way, or maybe it's in the bucket at the bottom of the well, or next to the well right here, this bucket right here. So a lot of cool things that you can kind of do. What I can do is I want to add a little bit of brown, so I'll add some broken wood into it. Oopsie, broken wood. I'm not sure what that is, but let's not use that one. Let's see here. See if I can find it. It's always nice to throw these little pieces of like wood lying around. So I can take this piece right here and I can kind of place these on the ground. You can have maybe some leaning up against this pillar right here, maybe one leaning up against the well itself, one right here, maybe one in the back right here going behind here like this. This one can be rotated this way. It's always good to throw in a little bit of rubble. So these little wooden pieces right here kind of work really well. Adding a bit of brown to it, giving it a little bit more warmer color to it, so it's not, instead of just all-encompassing kind of purple color. And then good. Let's make a couple traps. You can make traps with spikes from the Fantasy Battle Map style. So you'll see there's some spikes here. Now you don't have to have your traps be visible. This is like a choice that you have to make. I personally do show some traps on my battle maps, and for good reason, because It's that way players can kind of avoid it or use it to fight enemies. So in other words, what it is you have this trap here and you can see it, you can avoid it, but you can maybe push or tackle your enemies and make them fall into a trap. So it's kind of a nice little trick that you can kind of do. So I don't always have all my traps be visible. Sometimes they will be, sometimes they won't, because I find that environmental elements that your players get involved with, like kicking them off a wall or whatever, all of those things makes combat more interesting. So I'll create a group here. Let's say that your players maybe get overwhelmed by the spiders and they start running down this corridor, and then a spider gets hit by one of these spikes. Your players do a check, they jump over it, and then the spider goes impaled by the spike. So it can be important to kind of throw these in. What I'll do is I'll group it, then I can copy and paste it, and then kind of paste them where I want them to be. And sometimes I'll put a trap right in the beginning of the map for a reason, because then that way players will know what kind of traps to expect in the future, and in that way that will give them more sentience about, or more knowledge about the dungeon. So it's always good to throw in one trap in the beginning of the map, or the beginning of the map, so that players can kind of be like, okay, I know what I need to look forward to now. There's going to be traps, there's going to be puzzles, there's going to be combat. All of those things are very, very helpful. So if you want to have some invisible traps, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's up to you and which way that you want to do it. So don't feel there's any right or wrong way to go about doing it. It's just a decision that you as a DM or GM have to make for yourself. What do you want? I like to add both. A little bit of both always looks nice. Where are we at for time here? 56. So I think we're going to call this good. So here's what we will do. If people like this dungeon, we can continue this as a masterclass series, and then we'll have several episodes where we finish this. Or if people like instead, or both, what we'll do is I'll make this map clonable, and then the rest of you can go in and finish the rest of the map. There's about 4 or 5 rooms left. There's a lot of rooms left in here. So if you kind of follow that method that we went through and kind of putting everything together, you should be able to do it. So what I would do if you download this is just focus on one room. Don't worry about trying to do every single room. Do one room and then do it from beginning to end. So all of the environmental pieces and elements, all the details, the lighting and shadow. And then once you've done that, then you'll have a general idea of how you want to do the other rooms. So it's a great little practice. Just start with one room. Don't let yourself get overwhelmed. See if you can kind of put the fantasy regional elements together with the fantasy battle map regions to kind of put them together. So again, I will make this map clonable. We probably will turn it into a series. Where you can find the link to the map will be in the video description on YouTube. So if you do want to have a little bit of assignment, you can do that. And then if you do want to do the assignment, you can totally share them on our Discord server in event discussion. Definitely join our Discord if you haven't. In event discussion, you can kind of go ahead and just share your map. Go ahead and ping me, get my name in there, Maddie, and then let me know, and we'll kind of go over and look at it, and then maybe we can even review some other people's creations, or what they kind of did in the next session, or whenever our next masterclass for this is, because I'd love to kind of show off all of your work. I think that would be great. I'd love to see what you all kind of come up with, because I know that you can make these just as easily as I can with just a little bit of practice. All right, well, that ends the stream. Thank you so much. You guys have been awesome. I look forward to seeing you on Friday for another world, creating an epic world stream. And we will go ahead and probably continue this series on next month. Okay, so I'm excited about that. So please stay safe and healthy. Merry map making, and I'll see you all on Friday. Take care, everyone. Okay, bye.